Right. Hi there, everyone. I am reaching out to everyone at this particular point in the semester to give a couple of updates as to what's going on with the ARC end of semester protocols. We had a meeting on Friday, a discipline meeting, as well as an ARC coordinators meeting. So there has been information that has come out of that in regards to college-wide um, grading practices during this time of remote learning. So we'll talk about that. I also have received a couple of emails, had a few calls with ARC instructors in preparation for the final CRT. So I wanted to quickly go over resources that you all can use in terms of preparing for that final assessment. Lastly, I have come up with a end of semester slash final assessment rubric. Since we have eliminated the final portfolio as a part, or actually the cornerstone of the ARC final assessment, I wanted to go over this rubric with you guys so that you can kind of see the changes that we are making. Again, only for this semester, spring 2020. I'll see how it goes this semester and make any necessary tweaks for the fall semester. So let me go ahead and get started. One of the first things I wanted to cover with you all today is updates to the ARC end of semester procedures as well as scoring. So I'm going to pull up the document that I received from the ARC coordinator, one of my contacts at Wright College. So in sharing this with you, I want you all to hold off showing it to your students just yet. We just received this approved recommendation. Well, actually it's approved, so no longer recommendation, but it is somewhat a recommendation in terms of how we apply it. So we just received this on Friday. So I wanted to hear from Morgan, even Greg, as far as faculty council membership, as to what this means to the department. So again, do not share this yet with your students. I want to get some clarification of how we'll roll it out within the department. But this top portion, you guys will kind of see, I'm highlighting here, per the new COVID-19 district academic policy. So this information up top has already been emailed to students. I know I've kind of re-emphasized it in my Zoom class meetings, just so that students are aware, because for most of the updated grading options to take place, students will need to opt in. So let me just quickly go over this with you all. So again, what has already been shared with students, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago Friday, are the options for grading that is available during this COVID-19 session of remote learning, right? So if a student believes they may not get a final grade of C, so if the student already, so they have to self-identify, if they believe that they will not pass the class, right? If they feel that they may get something lower than a C, then they can opt into an NC or no credit option prior to the end of the semester. So it's similar to a withdrawal. But again, students will have to opt into this. So those students who perhaps were not passing at the time of midterm, who have been kind of doing their best to hang in there, but can come to the sober reality that they will not pass the class with anything higher than a C, they have an option to take the NC. And that will allow them to receive a D or F as their final grade. Well, the D or F that they receive will convert to an NC, okay? For those students who receive an A, B, or C, for those students who do actually meet the requirements of the class and pass the class, that letter grade will stand. So there is nothing that they have to do. So as instructors, do your best to which I think in most cases, if we have the Brightspace grading, if we've been entering our grades on Brightspace, students are able to kind of follow where they are in the class. Remind them to check their grade or contact those students who may be at risk to let them know of their option if they may receive a D or an F. So we can talk about that non-credit or no credit option. For those students who were passing at midterm or not, but are definitely passing the class now, you anticipate, even with the CRT or reflective essay, that they will pass with a B, or C. We encourage them to let that letter grade stand. Regardless whether they score under the C or score with the A, B, or C, if they choose to retake, the retakes will be free for all. So students will have 1 year for a no-cost retake of the course. And this is for any credit student who completes the semester and is not satisfied with their grade. So quick breakdown. Students self-identified do not think that they will pass the course with a grade of C or higher. They can opt out now at this particular point prior to a grade being assigned to receive the NC grade. Those students who will receive A, B, or C, they have the option to let the letter grade stand or to retake as well. Again, that option is for all. So we know that already. We at some levels are familiar with that. Now, what has been introduced, especially what we discussed at Friday's coordinator meeting, was what are each coordinator on each city college campus, what are we doing to help, right, to kind of support these changes in grading policy. So here is what has been recommended. Again, I want to set aside some time to talk with both Morgan and Greg to see what the strategy will be for Malcolm X art courses. But here is just some information as to what has been recommended. Again, you guys will see that the language that is constantly referred to is if passing or if not passing at midterm. So pay close attention to that language. So if passing or not passing at midterm, but the student does pass or pass with support the course, then that student is eligible for the 101 or 101-097 course. So we know this to be true in any case, okay? If passing at midterm, so if you have a student who is passing at midterm, but they end up failing the portfolio, again, they have that free retake for all policy. So that is whether or not they opt out of the score with the NC, or whether or not they received a C but really shot for an A. Anyone who, oh, I'm sorry, I see where that says fails the portfolio. Okay, I'm kind of slowing myself down on this one. This is in relation to some college campuses are still executing the final portfolio. So they haven't changed the end of semester assessment. All they did was go from portfolio face-to-face submission to electronic submission. So I'm going to kind of bypass everything that refers to portfolio, and I want you guys to consider CRT in its place, okay? So where it says if they were passing at midterm and failed the CRT, that's how we are going to translate this, just in the understanding of how we are conducting our end of semester assessment. So if a student isn't passing at midterm and they fail the CRT, those would be the students I would contact, tap them on the shoulder, my at-risk students, and explaining to them that no credit option, or of course the option to retake the course for free. So we are aware of that. If a student was passing at midterm, but for some reason or another has either failed to show up to take the final CRT, there is an option that will be available, or at least that is recommended, that the student can retake the placement test to determine where they may fall. So rather than having to retake the entire course, there may be an option of, if a student perhaps fell off, we can take into consideration what learning has taken place, and then from there, allow that student the opportunity to retake the placement to see where they would land. And that would somewhat underscore placement, whether or not they will need to retake the course or whether or not they can move on to the college level 101 or 101.97. If a student is passing at midterm and does complete the final CRT, but they do not pass, they too may have the option to retake the placement exam, to kind of take into consideration what learning has taken place, and to, again, in real time, determine where they may place, if they possibly can do the work of a college level course. So for these two areas, and let me try to highlight them for you here. I'm really taking this to conversation to the department chair, adjunct coordinator, and our faculty council representative, just to see how this will be communicated and translated to our courses at Malcolm X. So again, I'm simply sharing with you guys what has been recommended, but hold off on throwing this as a card out there to your students until it has been confirmed by the department how we will move ahead with it, okay? All right, moving on. If a student was passing at midterm but did not actively pursue the course at all after it moved on to remote instruction, our coordinator recommendation is that that student may also have the option of retaking the placement exam to see where they fall. So rather than just automatically taking them back to start, again, it does consider learning that has taken place and kind of putting it in the student's hands as to where final placement or determination will be, whether it'll be college level or the retaking of the English 96 course for free. So lastly, if student was passing at midterm but did a student initiated withdrawal after it was moved to remote instruction, for those students who withdrew after remote instruction, they too qualify for the possible student retake of the placement exam to determine where that student could be placed. So this whole idea of the placement, retaking the placement, it is an added option for students rather than retaking the course as a whole. Those students who were either scoring well or at the top of the spectrum, who for whatever reason or another may have fallen off through remote instruction, it gives them an opportunity to kind of take a look at what skills were retained, and if those skills are enough, if they're able to exhibit that learning adequately in order to move on to the next level. So I'll follow up with you guys on this. So just keep that in mind. I've kind of been waiting on this information to determine concretely how we'll move forward with those grading policies. So more so FYI for your information, but still pending confirmation. All right. All right. Another thing that I wanted to share with you guys, I've had questions about the final CRT. And although I reached out within the few weeks after, I think it was right around spring break time, so maybe about 2 weeks ago, we did collectively agree that one of the best resources for the final CRT, perhaps helping us with a assessment, is Common Lit. The website Common Lit, which is a resource for both students and instructors, but as instructors, it will give us reading questions, which I'm going to just coin here as exams, reading exams or quizzes that test student comprehension based on the reading. So since the art class, of course, is the alignment of reading and composition, Common Lit has one of the best collections of test banks based on reading, and especially exploring things like comprehension, um, vocabulary, as well as um, essay response, essay development. Okay, so let me share my screen with you again. Hold on 1 second. Make sure I have Common Lit up. All right. Okay, so on your screen, what you are taking a look at is the Common Lit website, and I will send this email link in the body of the email that I attached this video to, just so that you guys have it ready access, for your convenience. But I think at this part in the semester, we have all at least explored Common Lit. And for some of my instructors who I know have also taught high school level, Common Lit translates, we're using it. I see my student, not my student, my son completing Common Lit exercises as well in high school. So when you are considering assignments from the Common Lit website, let me show you guys. We would first, of course, if you haven't signed up for an account, create a free account. For teachers, it gives you access not only to the library, which is where you'll find the reading materials. It also gives you access to the quiz, the reading quizzes that accompany the text, and the answer key. So you do want to sign in. It is very difficult or impossible to navigate without an account. So when you have that account, to explore the possible CRT quizzes or assessments that you could use, you would come here to library. And again, because Common Lit translates both into really K through 12 instruction, when searching the library, I set certain filters first by grade level. So I really want to make sure that I weed out the lower grade levels, trying to keep with a certain lexile level. And college level is somewhere, I believe, around. I know my reading instructors can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but anywhere I think from about 1100 to 1400 is, I think, comfortably where we should be around college level. It could go higher or lower than that. I think it would depend. But I normally filter 11th to 12th grade so that I'm getting those more advanced text. I also like to look according to themes. So you guys know the way that the art course is designed or set up is more supportive of the thematic approach. So I follow that thematic approach to help students with kind of making connections to the text, those critical thinking connections, whether we are comparing and contrasting, discussing whether we agree or disagree. I really like to keep it revolving around central themes, right? So just for the sake of an example, one theme that we are currently working on in my class is the theme of language and identity. So I'm going to click here on identity, just so that I can kind of explore readings that students may be, find more easily adaptable, right? Because we've already been talking about and exploring these ideas. So based on my filters of 11th to 12th grade, more so again, those advanced texts, and the theme of identity, here is where you can begin to look at possible readings that you can administer for the final CRT. So You guys better than anyone, you know your class, you know kind of what, where you guys are in terms of, have you introduced short story or literature? Have you done more um, essays? You know, is it more political theory? Those type of categories um, are identifiers. So you guys see, let's see, what adolescents miss when we let them grow up in cyberspace. You see the Lexile level, 1340. So that's definitely college level. You see the category is more of an opinion piece by Brett Staples, and it is recommended for 12th graders. So this is, again, the type of information you should be tracking in. A, it's a college level, which is what we want to make sure we're exposing them to, especially for that final CRT. We also want to kind of make sure it presents some type of challenge. It can easily be a stand-in piece for what students may encounter in a 101 course or sociology or any college level course. So use that to help you make a decision. So I'm scrolling here, and I've already looked through this already. So I somewhat have my mind made up on where I'm leaning, but you guys, just for the sake of, again, an example, you would explore the library. You would set your filters, again, with this focus on college level and whatever theme that you may be interested in or that your class is currently discussing. And one that I had assigned, one reading I had assigned but hadn't had a chance to get to yet, was The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Adichie. So what I am thinking about doing, because just like the rest of you, I'm still kind of locking in on my final decision for the CRT. So this is a speech. Students, if I were to assign this, I could assign this text. It is in the vein of language and identity, just what we've been discussing for about the past month or so in class. So very familiar topics are being explored here. So I would feel comfortable presenting this. It is a speech, so it will read a little bit different from what my students are used to. So I may perhaps read it ahead of them, anticipate questions or cultural references that are made that they may not be familiar with, and try to front load that information through discussion. I'll also open it up to them so that they can view it in kind of a mixed media form. So where they are reading, which is what we require that they do, they also can, and here I'm clicking under related media, they could also view the YouTube TED Talk, which I don't see it showing up. So that's okay. If you guys were looking this up on your own, if you were to look up related media under this title, it would give the link for the YouTube TED Talk on which this text is based. So let me scroll. And you guys, you have options. I know if I were to give this to my students to read electronically, I like to adjust the font size. We've already, as a class, communicated that larger text sometimes is a little bit easier to read and follow. So again, just be kind of mindful of those things. But as you guys see, and I'm scrolling, I'm trying to scroll slowly, but I do want you to see the length on this. I'm throwing out a longer text for them because I know as an English 101 instructor, coming in at minimum, students are getting about 5 to 6 pages of reading. That's average for what we do in a 101 course. So I want them to be used to, just like we worked on all semester as well, dense material, attempting to break down your understanding or comprehension through the strategies introduced in class. I want to see how well they do with that. So we're still scrolling. So about 50 paragraphs. I believe on the TED Talk, this is like a 20-minute TED Talk. So it is somewhat lengthy. You guys, of course, you have the autonomy to lengthwise, it is up to you, but this is something to consider. So me looking at length, making a decision. I think this is manageable. This would be okay. So let me take you guys back. Sorry to do so much scrolling. I know it can be disorienting for me. So okay, now that I'm considering this may be my topic, I look over here. If you guys can kind of see my mouse, I go next to assessment questions. So this is what the actual final CRT would look like for my students. So I read the questions. Again, it's always good to go ahead of your students. Avoid blindly assigning this. Take a look at it first so that you can anticipate certain hiccups, right? Anything that you know may stump your students, some vocabulary that you know they may not be familiar with that you may need to explain. Try to consider that, work that into your overall discussions, if you will activate any discussions on the text prior to the test. Okay, we'll talk about that too in just a moment. So, all right, I'm looking at these questions. You guys can explore it in the same way. I believe there's about 7 questions. I think this is manageable for what we are doing with the final CRT and how we may be administering. We'll talk about that in just a second. All right, so okay, 7 questions. I've taken a look at them. I know that I may need to make some clarifications in the instructions for the test. So I may really go into tips in preparing for the final CRT, tips in recognizing the best multiple choice answer. I know some of you have already started that type of instruction in your class. I think that wouldn't hurt, especially kind of knowing what we know about how the tests are designed on Common Lit. All right, here is under discussion. You guys see where I click discussion. For the in-class essay prompt, I utilize the discussion questions provided by Common Lit, or else I will draft my own question. So I want to encourage instructors, don't think that you are kind of, put into a box or backed into a corner, that you have to use these exams as they are outlined. I know I used a Common Lit assessment for my practice CRT. And what I did there is I added questions because we have been working so much on vocabulary, and because we have been working so much on things like paragraph unity and coherence. I worked in some of those questions into my practice midterm CRT. So you can add, manipulate, and I'm doing my air quotes there, perhaps if you want to simplify the wording of the questions, consider that you have that authority to do so. So taking a look at the discussion question here, when was a time that you falsely judged someone or a group through the lens of a single story? How are you wrong in your judgments, and what made you realize this? So we've been talking about this in my class. We discussed language discrimination and how we do sometimes judge people based on how they talk, so this is in vein with what we have all already been going through in class. So I could see my students really jumping on this question, perhaps throwing in not only what they read here in this text, but other ideas that have been explored in other readings. So I probably would not change this, but I have the option to. So again, try to, where you can, make it connect with what you have going on in the class or concepts explored. Keep in mind, you do have those, you do have the autonomy to do that. So, all right, so considering that this is the CRT, final CRT that I'm going to use, for the sake of my final CRT, I am administering it through Brightspace. So I would download either the link or the PDF. Okay, so you guys see here where my mouse is, download the PDF. You can take whatever text, whatever you identify and select, and you can download. They want me to log in. All right, this is kind of messing up my example here, so I'm going back. But you do have the option when I am signed in, I am able to download the PDF, which gives me the text. So it gives me this actual article in PDF format. And it also gives me the guiding questions. I believe it gives me, no, actually I'm wrong. It gives me the assessment questions plus discussion. So it gives me this 3-part document. So either I will, if I'm making any changes, I can do so, save it as a Word document, and then of course, export it to a PDF. So we have those options so that students can go in and change it. But downloading the PDF will work better for me since I am administering the final assessment through Brightspace, through the quiz option. So we'll talk more about that. All right. So Common Lit is an option that you guys can consider when you are looking for materials for that final CRT assessment. Not only does it give you the text, it also gives you a short assessment, and it also sets up what could be your in-class essay question / extended response. So you guys have that. Thousands of text within the library. So Common Lit, great option. Another thing, when speaking to instructors, I have also heard recommendations, especially those adjunct instructors who are teaching at other college campuses. I know that Truman, normally their reading center writes a final CRT every semester. So some instructors have access to that Truman final CRT. If you would like to use that, please feel free to do so. Let me know if you can, so that way, if other instructors would like to use it, I can share it with them as well. So if you have any other CRT options that you are exploring, kind of let me know. Follow up with me on that, just so that I can then share it and disperse that information with the group, because I don't want to just limit us to Common Lit. Keep in mind, however, that the CRTs that may come from, let's say, Truman, I know Wright, I think they're writing their own. I believe Harold Washington is as well. It may be a much longer exam. So just consider that, especially if you are putting, well, I think we all are putting time restrictions on the final CRT. And I'll pause just a moment to float that question. Are you guys, how are you administering your final CRT? I guess that's how I can ask. I just shared that I plan to administer mine through Brightspace quiz, right? The quizzes function. So that will be me uploading the PDF that I just kind of showed you guys from Common Lit. I may add with that video instructions where I'm kind of talking them through exactly what they will need to do, and then giving them from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. time to get it done. It would really be up to you guys how you administer, but kind of share with me your ideas or plans on that. I'll be interested, is there a better way that I can do it, or for other instructors who may be unsure of what platform they will use. I know some of you talked about Google, either Google Forms or Google Classrooms, right? So I know we're all kind of using our own various forums, whatever we're more comfortable with. So feel free sharing that with me. I'll be interested in not only knowing, but also putting that back out there as a resource for other instructors, okay? One last thing, oh yes, the rubric. Right before spring break, I emailed you all about being on the lookout for a survey that I would be sending, especially a survey capturing students' idea of the class, right? Students' feedback of the class. What can we do to improve? And I will be very honest. I've been idling with this um, activity, because with us having the COVID-19 crisis and moving to remote learning, I think in asking student feedback on the class in this format is almost kind of similar to walking into the lion's den, right? Um, I don't want to assume, but I can anticipate what students will say. You know, all of the breakdowns in technology, how really the soul of the art class is, it is designed for a learning community. It is designed to be face to face. So I almost feel silly in asking the question, how has it been working out remotely? In that it's almost, um, I'm almost positive that our students have been struggling in various forms, but struggling no less. So I am aware of that. What I am working on that I think would be more helpful will be based on the feedback from instructors, based on the feedback from the ARC instructors, ideas on ways that we can kind of really maximize or get the most out of this remote learning forum. I'm sure you guys have heard by now that not only will we be moving forward in summer instruction through remote learning, but the possibility of us doing this in the fall semester as well is almost guaranteed. Sorry, my paw, I had to mute really quickly. Um, so again, I'll touch bases with you all, and you know, we'll kind of open up a forum to discuss best practices with this online instruction, with remote learning. And I think using that feedback to help with course design for the fall 2020 course um, could be beneficial. And then from there, we perhaps can kind of pick up how the students are responding to it. So kind of first getting us at our best and then tapping students for their feedback. So I am pausing on student survey for now, but look forward to a instructor forum where we really kind of discuss those. Um, even though we have eliminated the portfolio aspect of the final assessment, I still want to collect data. So I wanted to share with you all a revised um, final assessment rubric, especially with our new normal, which is, you know, remote learning, with us administering the revised final assessment through CRT and reflective essay. That is what we are doing here at Malcolm X. So our final assessment is that CRT, which will assess, um, I believe, still summary writing. We did agree still summary writing, that comprehension test, as well as um, essay, the prompt essay, in class essay writing question. We want to see how well they can write about what they've read. Okay, so those three elements of the final assessment are still in place. What we have eliminated is the portfolio, and we also have eliminated that cohort scoring that we normally employ to confirm or deny, or shall I say dispute, whether or not a student will pass on to the next level or need to be retained. So there have been some changes that we are mindful of as we move forward into these last few weeks of the semester. So again, let me reiterate what we are, Malcolm X department, what we are assessing: final CRT. There needs to be some summary writing assignment. There needs to be a critical reading test, and there also needs to be in class, what I call, when I say in class, some timed or limited writing session where we are kind of assessing students' ability to write about what they read, as well as adhere to the essay structure conventions, right? That formatting and structure. So with that in mind, I want you guys to take a look at the rubric that we will be using to score, mainly to keep record of how we scored our students. Bear with me one second. So I will be sending this link out to you all. The good news is that before we go into the final week, so we're about 3 weeks till the end of the semester, before we go into scoring or conferencing with our students, well, actually, no, this wouldn't be before conferencing. After we have scored, conferenced with our students, as we are preparing to upload final grades, I want instructors to remember to complete the rubric for every student. So not just the students who pass or who we know are moving on, but also to students who may have failed. Also, any student who you did not drop after midterm, right? Any student who was still on your roster, whether or not they finished the course or not, okay? So I know that isn't traditionally what we have done. We've normally, whatever student submits a portfolio, then we complete a rubric for that student. This is a little bit more intentional in tracking student scoring, yes, but also completion. So there has been, and just to give a sidebar on that, there has been a heavy reliance of the data in terms of students who fail. So administration, our, I'll say district, the provost, they are viewing our ARC data almost literally in terms of those who fail. They, in some cases, are assuming students who failed the course have done so within the confines of the classroom, right? But we as instructors know that sometimes what contributes to a student failing the course is, outside influences, whether it is the juggling of a job and work, other responsibilities, whether now with the reality of COVID-19, maybe their work situation changed and the time to meet just wasn't there. So we know that there are a whole lot of extenuating circumstances that can play into why a student failed the course. So this is why I'm asking you guys to do the extra work of considering everyone on your roster after you had done your purge, any administrative withdrawals, after midterm. Consider everyone when you are completing this rubric, okay? So let me show you guys the rubric that I will be sharing with you all in, again, capturing or collecting the data for our final assessment. So let me click here. All right. Last semester was our first time going electronic with our scoring. And for those of you who attended the check-in meetings, I cannot say enough how awesome we all did with that. I want to say it was, I think, about 89% success in terms of participation, all of the scoring taking place electronically. And even though it wasn't 100%, that is still pretty high for a first semester rollout. So I did want to thank you guys for hanging in there with me. I know it was a new process, but you guys did awesome with it. So that's why I do not doubt at all that you guys will do a good job in administering or at least tracking final results of the CRT assessment for this semester. So again, heavy emphasis on spring 2020. This is really just what we are doing with what we have been given, with what has transpired this semester with the pandemic. So this is not the situation moving forward. This is only the situation while we are under the remote learning orders, okay? So final CRT for spring 2020 semester. Again, this is to help collect data for the department as to what students pass the class, into what level, whether or not that is the 101, that is our P, whether or not that is the 101-097, that is our P minus, or what students will need to be retained. Now, keep in mind, even though we know students will have the options with retaking the class, I still want us to consider results, okay? So that is what we are recording here. So because we are eliminating the portfolio portion, a lot of the questions that I am asking in this final assessment, it does consider the writing, right? But primarily it is a breakdown of the objectives for the English 96 class. So where before we've had a rubric, the portfolio rubric to determine how to place a student, I want us to use this rubric not only to record the final determination, but also just to kind of get a clearer idea of, did the student meet the outcomes or objectives for the class? Are we in good faith, you know, are we able to co-sign our recommendation, right? So this is just asking questions about overall readiness, as well as their ability to kind of execute the outcomes or objectives. So very similar to our last electronic rubric, where I do need you guys to identify the section. And you see the red stars by those questions that are required. So you will, no matter what, in completing these, you will need to put something on every field, okay? So again, identifying student ID number, very important that for every rubric you complete that you do have this information. I cannot tell you the number of times that administration may ask me, can you check this particular student ID? I need to know how did this student do with their English 96 class, right? You know, so they do call upon the data. So if you guys will help me out by really making sure you complete each field. Also, when considering what does a passing CRT, final reflective essay, what does that passing student look like, right? So I pulled directly from our course syllabus the objectives of the course. So maybe the student showed up every day, they've turned in all of the assignments. So point-wise, yes, the student has passed the class, but when we really want to dig a little bit deeper and kind of really assess those skills, those outcomes, this particular rubric is a little bit more clear in how you came to that final assessment. So does the student adequately compose well-developed essays with a clear thesis statement, supported with relevant specific evidence while employing a revision process? This question alone embodies what we were looking for in that final portfolio. So even though that particular element is eliminated from the assessment, you know, I kind of still get to collect information as to how overall that student has done throughout the semester in terms of their readiness to move on to the next level. So if you feel, based as instructor, you guys again are making the call, we are not grading in cohorts. So as nurturer, as instructor, as facilitator, do you feel that the student writes and knows how to utilize a writing process, right? You would let me know yes or no. Here we get into reading. Does the student exemplify the habits of a successful reader, such as the ability to utilize a number of strategies, right? This allows us to assess how well the student has retained and is able to illustrate, their understanding of the reading strategy. So you would answer there. Can the student, and I put, this is my own, parenthetical emphasis here. Can the student basically construct coherent and grammatically correct prose in edited standard American English? Now, this isn't to downplay the importance of grammar and its role in the art class. Very important. However, I don't want us to expect grammar savants at this particular level. So I do want us to have a expectation of, basic usage, right? But not so much an expectation of mastery, if that makes any sense. So if you feel that the student at least has a basic understanding of constructing grammatically correct prose, and even if that understanding is to seek out a tutor or to get additional eyes on their paper, kind of let me know where they fall. So you guys will see several questions about that here. Again, each question is designed to assess the outcomes or objectives of the course. So we've seen reading and writing. Here's one on metacognition. Is the student able to accurately assess one's own strengths and weaknesses as a reader, writer, and learner? So this is highlighting the reflective essay. Even if you make this a paragraph or a very short assignment, a journal entry, for me, it is my final essay in my class. It's a pretty important document in that in reading the reflective essay, I get a very clear idea on where not only the student is, but where they place themselves. So that this is where we normally get that conversation, if you will, what I kind of call an exit interview from the student as to, how they assess their own learning in the class. So this takes into consideration the reflective essay. Do you feel that their assessment is accurate? So here you would answer yes or no. Very clear. And you guys know, I did not include a maybe button because the way that the outcomes and objectives is explained to the students on the course syllabus is upon successful completion. So we're leaning more towards yeses, okay? I mean, it should be understood that, these are yeses upon successful completion. So again, writing, kind of that synthesis of reading and writing, we are looking at questions on ability to use textual evidence to connect with the text. So we kind of have questions there. All right, here's what I want you guys to really make sure is clear for me. Final determination. So whatever point systems you are using individually for your CRT, whatever point systems you are applying for your final essay, because I know I grade mine separately, that is me. But however you guys are, again, breaking down the scoring of your CRT, we have that autonomy here. But all I want to know is final determination. After you have gone through whatever point system or scoring system that you have in place, let me know how you are placing the student. So final determination. Will the student go on to the standalone 101 course? You would let me know that. Will they, it's my bad. Oops, sorry about that. Will they go on to the 101-97 option, which is the pass with support, which is where I'm thinking maybe most of our students may fall. And again, that's just me assuming. I have heard from some of you who have had really high level, both readers and writers. So you definitely have identified students who are going that clear path to 101. But for me, most of my students in my class, out of the 14 I have left, they pretty much almost, I would probably say 9 out of 10 will be placed into the 101-097 just based on what I can assess without the CRT at this time. So I may be speaking too soon. But if you feel that any student doesn't show the readiness, and that really is important. The reason I say the readiness is major is because you don't want to take a student who is building, in the process of building their understanding of reading, writing, that relationship, and how it will help them in every aspect of their college career. All right, sorry about that, you guys. But making final determination, please make sure that it is clear here. Okay, so whether that's a P minus, or F, whatever final grade is for that student, well, not letter grade, but where you place them, make sure that that's clear here. Good thing that I like about Google or Microsoft Forms is this will automatically generate the data. So again, the data is for use of the department and district in determining or informing how we implement the course moving forward. So very important info here. Last question. If the student failed the course, so if you are completing this rubric for a particular student who has failed the course, and if they failed the course for any other reason than meeting the outcomes for the course, maybe job got in the way, maybe you lost them during the remote learning process, maybe technological issues, whatever specifically you can point to in terms of being the reason why that student failed the course. If you could please add that extra step to the process. Again, I am really focusing this semester on not just who passed or failed based on who turned in the assignments, but who passed or failed based on at the start of midterm, once we kicked off assessments, who was on your roster, right? Who perhaps didn't even show up to complete the CRT, but still failed the class. Like, I would like for us to attempt to still complete rubrics in those cases. Now, I know you may feel like, oh my goodness, is this going to go towards my record, right? Because I think what I have taken for granted is that as a college instructor, I have not always had the pressure of teaching on a high school level where success rates were highly taken into consideration. So I know that some instructors, especially those who have a background in K through 12 instruction, I think in the past I hadn't considered, why so much pushback, with if a student isn't meeting the outcomes of the class, based on the recommendations of the class, that student should be retained. Like, as a college instructor, we know that that is the 1 + 1 = 2. However, college or instructors who taught at a high school level, almost everything is anti-fail. And to help facilitate that anti-fail, success rates were considered. So instructors who had the most pass were rewarded, or what's another word I can say, if not rewarded, praised based on success rates. Malcolm X does not consider success rates at all. We do not rate instructors based on the number of students who pass or fail a course, because we know, of course, that that is fluid. That will change every semester. It's not an indication of, in some cases, it's not an indication of whether or not the instructor did their job or not. So I am aware that that fail is, for some of us, it is not an option. And I get that and understand that, especially with this climate of remote learning. But I want us to be honest, and I want us to kind of be a tad bit realistic in, if a student, even one who stayed on through remote learning, even one who did their best to, with their assignments, did their best with the CRT, even if all of that is in consideration, if I think that the outcomes in some way or another is lacking, if I know that they are lacking a vital skill necessary for them to do the work in a English 101, English 101 097, or any college level course that they will now be eligible for if they were to pass, then I do take that into consideration. So just to throw that out there, do not be scared of identifying those students who fail. So I just wanted to let you guys know that is okay. It does not reflect on you or your abilities or skills as an instructor. This is strictly data. Okay, so for data purposes, if a student has dropped off, if they failed because they dropped off, it had absolutely nothing to do with outcomes or objectives or things like that, leave me a note here. Make note of that so that we can have that in turn when district or the provost or anyone wants to say, well, look at all of the students who have to repeat, and things like that. They'll have some context for that information. All right, I've stayed a little too long there, so let me move on. I will be attaching this rubric or sharing this rubric in the email that I am forwarding this video. So here's what I want you guys to do for me. Let me know what you think perhaps I should add to this rubric, if you think anything is missing. If you have any questions about that or the CRT options, whether we're talking about Common Lit or perhaps any other CRTs that are being floated at other campuses that you would like to introduce, I would love to hear back from you guys on that. And lastly, if you guys have any questions or concerns about that ARC scoring that I opened up the video with, again, please do not share with your students. I do not want us to get ahead of ourselves in that. I would really want to make sure that this is adopted by the department-wide before we jump on it, okay? So I'm waiting for that, but I do want you guys to view it. So kind of let me know your ideas on that as well. So I'll bullet point everything in an email, kind of lay it out there for you all. Go ahead. But if you have any additional questions on the final CRT, any questions about how to score or what revisions or customizations you plan to make to it, feel free to share. Again, this situation is unique for all of us. So I'm learning. I'd like to know what platforms are out there that I perhaps maybe haven't considered that could make this, especially the administering of the assessment, a tad bit easier. So I'll send out the email. You guys let me know ideas, and then collectively as a group, we can have options, that work best for our individual teaching styles. So I hope again that you all are doing well. Good news, 3 more weeks, yay. And then we'll kind of be over this, but I wanted to touch base just to kind of lay out kind of what we're doing for the final assessment in those final weeks. And most importantly, remind you all that recording and the collection of data is very important to the survival of the art class. So really making sure that we stay on top of that. All right, I am going to go ahead and sign off now. Look forward to the email along with info, links on everything that we just discussed. All right, have a good one, you all, and I'll see you all soon.